Welcome to Quantum RX, the podcast that teaches you how to move beyond stuck emotions and trauma for mind, body, and spirit healing. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. And so today we are going to be discussing things in the realm of growth and grief, because there's a lot to unpack there. And first, I just want to acknowledge that the process of self-growth it's not super easy. And there are days that you're going to feel great and days that it's not going to feel so great. But there's always going to be that underlying knowing. I know that some days I had some this past week or two where I was faced with challenges and they were tough. And I had somebody come back at me, and it was during a conversation and they just kind of lashed out. And I'm going to talk about that when we get into the meat of the episode, but I'm going to talk about what that looked like, what it felt like. And I knew that it had zero to do with me and everything to do with them. So we're going to talk about this aspect of self-growth is when you are doing the work, how other people respond to you, and then you have to respond to the situation and then thereafter. So we're really going to get into that. But specifically, we are going to be talking about first, why people might be avoiding you, ghosting you, start some kind of a beef with you, or have aggression with you when you are going through this process. We are going to talk about grief and how that relates to self-growth. And we're going to talk about some ways that you can address what's going on when you are in these situations, and then the feelings that come up inside you after the fact. So let's get into the episode. When you are going through self-growth, there are many steps that are happening. It's happening on an emotional standpoint. It's happening on a mental standpoint. There are, and it's also happening for the people that are around you. And that's really, really important to recognize, because we are not lone beings or lone wolves in this world. We have to interact with other people at least some of the day. There are certain people who are single and work from home and don't really have to go out very often. That is kind of a rarity. And I will say probably not the healthiest way to exist from the standpoint of we really need community to survive. That is wired into our DNA. And I've spoken in past episodes about the extreme importance of community. So in the self-growth world, there are lots of things, as I mentioned, that are happening. One thing that happens when you embark on your journey of self-growth is people start perceiving you differently. They start seeing you in a different light, because as you change and evolve and your personality changes and evolves, it brings up different things for them, because we've spoken about this in the past. We are mirrors of each other. And so what will happen is sometimes people will see this in you and they will avoid you, and try, like I will say this, in the past couple of weeks, I've seen the same person out in public 3 times. I was trying to think there, 3 times in the past 2 to 2.5 weeks. And every single time I saw her, but I don't know that she knew that I saw her, because I saw her at the grocery store one time and she kind of swiftly turned and started doing something else to try to not make eye contact. Same, there were several instances that happened in the store like that. I saw her just kind of out, driving around, and we were both going really slow in opposite directions, and she kind of diverted her eyes. And then there was one more that I just thought of. Oh yeah, we actually were, I'm not going to say where we were at, because this will be a dead giveaway to who it was, and I want to honor that person's identity and privacy. But we saw each other in a certain place where we were amongst a lot of people. And multiple times I tried to kind of make eye contact with her just to say hi. But then there was an obvious situation where I was standing talking to another person and she walked up because she had to ask the other person a question. And it was really just awkward. I was like, "Hey there, how are you doing?" I was like super friendly and cordial. And she was just kind of like, "Hey," like that really quick. And then just started talking to the other person, then spun around real quickly and ran off. So there are weird things that happen. And I know that I believe this person in general tends to have a little bit of like an underlying angst. There's an underlying angst with this person. So I honor that. Like I will always give people their space. Like when I saw her in the store, I didn't chase after her on purpose because I knew that she was doing that for a reason and I was going to honor that boundary. But it was just really, I mean, when it came down to it, it was kind of like this was like a build and it was like an opportunity for her to actually say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And like at least have like a 10-second, acknowledgement of each other. But she didn't. She just kind of did all of this avoidance. And then when she was forced to see me because I was standing next to the person she had to talk to, it was really awkward. It was really awkward. And so when I do see her and she tends to be better in singular one-on-one interactions, which is totally fine. I don't bring up the subject. I just meet her where she's at. I honor how she's feeling. I don't try to push anything because a lot of people will try to push. So that's a really kind of interesting example of what happens when you are doing self-growth and people see you evolving, emerging as a different version of yourself, a different identity, because every single day you do this work, your identity changes. And that's the goal. That is the end goal. And so I wanted to bring this up because it seems like it's a theme that's playing out in my life. And many times when themes are playing out in my life, it's like, a very big, aha to, yeah, maybe this is something other people are going through that we should acknowledge and talk about. So I also wanted to like get into, kind of those dynamics. I mean, we are changing, identity is changing. When somebody else sees you or speaks to you and they are used to the previous versions of you that they previously identified with, it can be jarring for them. It can be triggering for them because they know deep down, everybody knows that they need to do some work and they're just not ready for it. And that's okay. That is totally okay. And the truth of the matter is that some people will figure this out along the way. And there are some people who just never will. And they'll just go through life kind of, I want to say like a slave to their own choices, but it's choices that we've all made and there's no right or wrong. We all have different paths and different journeys and that's okay. So I wanted to acknowledge that, but also bring up these examples because it hurts. It doesn't feel good when people avoid you or ghost you completely. I've had that happen too. And we're going to talk about that in the next section when we talk about grief. I've also had people kind of poke, the quote or colloquialism, poke the bear. I've had people try to poke the bear with me too, or just really try to start something when they are feeling very threatened and challenged by your growth. Again, I had an interaction just recently, and I don't want to say who this was because I would like to honor their privacy and their identity. But I was having a conversation with this person, and it was a conversation about some pretty serious topics. We were talking about like communication and life and things like that. And this person, I just watched, like, I watched them, like, the anger and the frustration well up and boil because they were being confronted with the fact that I had done a tremendous amount of self growth and trauma work and emotional work. And they really hadn't. They have thought about it. They're in the contemplation stage and they've kind of scratched the surface. But really, when, the button was pushed and they were triggered, just had an explosive moment and started, I don't want to say raging, but there was definitely some anger there that came up. And they were like, I can't handle this. Like this version of you, since you've started doing all of this work, I just can't stand it. Blah, 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 that type of thing. Like they went on and on and on about this. And so it was really like, I was taken aback. At first, I will be completely honest. I felt attacked. It hurt because this person knows that this work that I do, and especially doing it for myself so that I can show up as a better human being for my kids, especially my family, my the people that I work with, the people that I serve on a daily basis, my friends, just the world. So I can show up as a better version of me for the world. This person was attacking that, and that it doesn't feel good. So I tried to do some of the things that I tell you guys to do. First, I went to the, breath and regulation. So I didn't respond and I didn't just go back at them. And I will tell you, I didn't even feel the urge. I didn't feel the urge to attack them and give them like a little dig and be like, well, you don't do any of the work. So, you don't have anything to say, or you shouldn't have, how can you have an opinion on what I do for a living or what I do for myself in the self growth area and the trauma area and working on my emotions when you don't even do it yourself? I could have done that. I didn't feel the need to do it. And I didn't even feel there wasn't a trigger to do that. I felt immediately, when I started thinking about this person and why I care about them. And like I've told you guys to do, take a couple of breaths, and then think about why you love this person, are grateful for this person, any of the things. You have appreciation, compassion for this person. I was feeling a lot of compassion for this person in that moment, even though I was also feeling a little bit attacked and it hurt. But I also knew that this person was coming from a place of, you know, hurt and trauma and repressed anger and so many other things. And like I said, I know that they have been contemplating these identity changes and doing some of this work, but they're not to the place where they've taken the first step yet. So I kept all of this into context. I tried to talk and, I don't want to say rationalize because that's not the right word. I was just trying to talk and meet them where they were at, but they were having none of it. So I let it go. And we ended up having a conversation later that day where I was able to bring up some of these items that we just talked about. And they were definitely more calm, more receptive, but still in the kind of defensive posture and the defensive stance. And that's okay. Like they know, I could see by the look on their face that like they knew that there were things that had to change, but again, probably not ready for it. So I just let it go there. After that, things seem to be okay. And I am obviously always ready to have those conversations when people are ready. So there was that. And I always just leave the door open and maybe sometimes plant little seeds so that if they're curious and if they want to have these conversations and, step into this world, or even I know that sometimes when you have relationships with people like friends and family and close, I would say even some closer acquaintance types, sometimes it can be hard for them to have the courage to ask for your advice, ask for your opinion, or even want to work with you. I will say there are some people I don't work with because I know I am too close to them and too close to the situation for me to completely hold this space without judgment and in complete safety and all of that. So if that's the case, I'll refer those people to whoever I think is best suited to work with that. And so I wanted to acknowledge that so you could see and hear that when you're going through this process, you will come across people like this. And sometimes you'll see it happen on social media where they kind of target you and they say things to try to push your buttons. I ignore those people now. I would say 4 or 5 years ago, it probably would have triggered me. And I would have been like, oh my God, what's happening? They're like really attacking me. But yeah, it's going to happen. It will come from unlikely sources, I will say. Some of the people that you think should be your biggest champions and supports may be the people who are doing this to you. So I would like you to be aware of that as well. But yeah, just know that Growth comes with grief. And this is the next segue to the next section where we are going to talk about the grief associated with this. And that is a very, very valid feeling. I wanted to talk about the fact that when we think of grief, we tend to think about the loss of someone or something. So the loss of somebody very close to us, a family member, a close friend, a coworker that you had for a long period of time, a mentor, all of these places where we could experience the loss of somebody close to us, a pet, a beloved pet, a job. We don't think about these things. A job that you had for a really long time that you liked and you were attached to. I know in this day and age that sounds far-fetched, but I do know people who have grieved the loss of a job because they were attached to the people there or they really loved what they were doing. There are many, and I will also use this opportunity to say you could grieve one part of that system. Some people stay in a job because they really like the people, but they hate their job. So you could be in that situation where there might be a little bit of relief from the loss of that job, but you might also have some grief from all of those amazing relationships that you had. So it's really important to think of life as yes and not either or, because I think when we get that's in that black and white, very strict way of thinking, when you open the opportunity to think in the gray and be flexible in your thoughts and feelings, that is where you can find happiness and you can find true grace and understanding for yourself and others, because life is not black and white. It's filled with every shade of every color under the rainbow. And so I want to acknowledge that too. But to get back to the things that we can grieve, you know, like I said, it could be the loss of a job, the loss of anything, something that you held dear to you, a home, a car, a certain possession. A lot of people have, prized possessions or mementos, like a piece of jewelry that was passed down in your family or a picture. I mean, it could be anything. For me, this is kind of a really funny thing, but I used to have an old pair of hiking boots that I loved because those hiking boots had carried me through so many places all over the US. They had gone to Europe. They gone to Ireland specifically, and they'd gone to a lot of places. And I was like, how cool is that? That I have this thing or these things, because it was a pair of shoes that has been, so many places with me and allowed me to experience life and experience culture and experience different people. I always thought that was something really cool. And I didn't lose those. I ended up giving those to somebody else. I actually gifted them to somebody else. But there was a part of me that when I gifted those was a little bit sad. And it was because of all of the memories and emotions that were tied to that. And that's okay. So I just want people to remember that grieving can happen in many different ways. It's just not the significant loss of, someone. There's lots of things that we can grieve in life. And that was a lesson that I learned last year. I would say it's even fair to grieve things that we decided may not have been good for us. Like if you were in a divorce, there were obviously, I'm not going to say for everybody, but for most people, there were obviously some good times and some attachment and why you wanted to be with that person in the first place. And so it's okay when you're going through a divorce to grieve the loss of that relationship or the part of the relationship you loved and enjoyed. And it's really, really important to feel all of that and to process it, because when we don't, we get into trouble. And I'm actually going to talk about that in the next episode. We're going to talk about emotions and the importance of emotions, and when we don't acknowledge, feel, and process them, how we get into trouble. And so I wanted to acknowledge the grief in self-growth, because there will be grieving. There's the grieving of the past versions of you that you have chosen to let go of. You could even experience some grief for the parts of you that you're trying to change that won't, that aren't ready to change yet. And that's okay too. You can be sad that those parts aren't willing to change yet. Totally okay. Everything's okay. Everyone thinks that self growth and healing and working on trauma and emotions is a linear process and should look a certain way. There's no rules, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. And I want you to understand that. That's really a very important piece of this puzzle because I think in the self growth process, you could also have some self talk that leads to judgment. Like, well, why can't I change this right now? When it's ready and when you're ready, it will happen. So just know that. But in the meantime, one of the aspects that you will deal with is, it's going to feel like a judgment on you, but it's really a judgment on themselves. They are judging themselves for what they see you are doing and the fact that they are not ready to do it themselves. That is what it comes down to. And it's okay. It's okay, but you have to be able to handle it. You need to handle it for yourself internally, and you need to be able to handle that relationship. So that's what we're going to talk about last. We are going to talk about the fact that there's a process to go through here. And so when this happens for you, and the first time you realize it and are aware and you feel it, it's probably not going to feel good. Like I said, I mean, I encountered that a week or so ago and it didn't feel awesome, but I was quickly able to get myself to the point where I was realizing it was them and not me. And like coming to a place of compassion and understanding for this person. So that is what I'm going to say. Number one, realizing that it is them and not you, even though it's going to feel like it's you. So when that's happening, just go ahead and have those moments when you have the opportunity, or even if you can access it in the moment, take some deep cleansing breaths. And I know when you're like in the dynamics and the energy and the emotion of an interaction with somebody, it's hard to sit there and think like, oh, I need to breathe in for 3 seconds and breathe out for 6 seconds. Do your best. Do your best. And just, realize that you need to let that person be them. You can't control them. All you can control is your response to them. And so I would say then after you've had those breaths, just give yourself a split second to kind of come to center. And again, think of any of the many reasons that would like activate that heart center for you, that heart brain coherence that we've talked about before, but just even thinking and being able to feel why you might have gratitude for this person, compassion for this person, love for this person, appreciation, even feel kindness towards them. Any of those feelings, if you can bring that in and think about it, you are going to automatically shift your body into a more calm and parasympathetic state. And so you can do that. You can also just don't react, like don't go back at them. Whenever you want to say something, take a beat, take a second and say it calm, say it clearly, say it with intention because it sets a boundary and it sets a standard. Just say, hey, I understand. I understand you. I hear you. Maybe we're not ready to have this conversation right now, and that's okay. We'll give you the caveat again. There's always, caveats here because, like I've said, there's no right or wrong way for this to go. But things sometimes they will try to keep things going sideways. Just don't engage that. They might get mad. They might get mad when you say that. They'll come back at you with some kind of retort. Just let it happen and be like, that's okay. I hear you. Don't say, I understand why you're feeling this way, because truthfully, you probably don't. You might think that you do, but you probably don't know exactly how that other person's feeling. It can also feel invalidating to that person. So I would say, don't be like, I know why you're feeling this way, or I'm sorry you feel this way. Another way to invalidate how somebody's feeling. Just be okay with saying, I see you, I hear you. We can address this at another time. And you just stay away from the qualifiers like the I'm sorries and, the I'm sorry you feel this way, because that automatically invalidates how they're feeling. And they are going to pick up on that. And it's kind of a way to almost make yourself a little better than them. So I don't recommend using that kind of language. I just genuinely try to feel from the heart that this person is struggling and their reaction is an attack on you. And that's truly what it is. It's they are frustrated because they know deep down that something needs to change and they're not ready to do it. And they see you doing it and that's triggering. And that's the unfortunate reality of the situation. But again, we are always on our own journeys. There's no right or wrong way to do this work, the healing, the self growth, the trauma work, the emotional work. There's absolutely no right or wrong way to do it. And it's definitely, like I said, it's never linear, lots of ups and downs, lots of twists and turns and meandering. And the more you do the work, the more you will be able to have instances like this where you can not react and not, like have those knee jerk reactions or want to go right back at this person and then attack them, because that's the quickest way to ruin relationships and make things much more difficult than they need to be. Because when you can de-escalate a situation and just sit there and hold an intention or a space of kindness, compassion, appreciation, love, gratitude, all of those things, any of those things, any one of those things, your energy will impact that person, even if you're not in the same room. Even if you are not together, if you're speaking on a phone, if you are having like a Zoom interaction or a meeting of some kind, or if you're standing in the same room, I would say it's probably a little bit more impactful if you're in the same room. But just know that when you do that, you are setting the stage for another conversation and inviting that person to step into healing and self-growth themselves. If you're curious as to if you have any stored emotions or trauma that might be causing your illness, preventing you from achieving your biggest goals, or even just showing up as the best, most authentic version of yourself, I invite you to take my free Stored Emotions and Trauma quiz. You will find that link in the show notes.
If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.